What's up guys, welcome back to Ride the Bean. Today we are in Split, Croatia, one of Croatia's most interesting cities and most visited by tourists, as you can see. We are here to learn some history today because this city is full of history. So lucky for us, we have our history teacher with us again. So what are we going to learn today?
So Split is a very unique city. I'm excited to show you that because it is at the crossroad between big cultural influences. You have the Ottoman Empire and the Roman Empire. And on top of that, Split was also influenced by the Republic of Venice and the Austrian Empire. So you can imagine there's a very diverse history and architecture here. And we'll find more about this today. So it all started with the Greeks, who founded the city in the 3rd century BC. And you might be wondering, why is it called Split? Does it have anything to do with the English words? Actually no, it is called after this flower here, which is called Split, and it's very abundant in the region. But it is only in the Roman Empire, much later, that our story begins. Most Roman emperors did not live very old. They usually disappeared as a child or a teenager in mysterious accidents. But Democritus, the emperor at the time, surprised everyone because he grew so old that he even came to need a retirement home. In 303, after recovering from a long illness, he decided it was time to retire and that he would do so once his retirement home would be ready, the Fortified Palace, and he handed over his seat 2 years later to Galerius. He chose this site due to its proximity with the sea, which is very strategic in a time plagued by civil wars, to prevent invasions. The palace has fortified walls and encircle the old town or the city center. And today, everything we're going to see is happening inside these walls. As you can see in this picture, the sea used to come all the way up to the city wall. The city was built on 2 levels, with the people living on the 2nd level. But now our tour starts in the basement. Now it is used as a market for souvenirs and traditional Croatian art and craft.
This is so cool.
So this is 90% identical as what it used to look like in Roman time. And everybody's wondering, why is that Roman architecture lasts so long? Well, recently, new findings suggest that a chemical reaction between the quicklime, the seawater, and the volcanic ash in the cement they use is the factor behind this longevity. And this place, can you guess its function?
Probably a sewer or something.
Yeah, this used to be the sewers, and here you have a little clue that people lived upstairs. Because what could a hole going in the water be used for? I think you can guess.
It's a toilet hole.
Yes, that's a toilet hole, and so this was the sewers going into the sea, and up there people lived. So
that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the Romans had functioning basically flushing toilets.
I think they were the inventors of the sewer system in Europe. That was a big change for hygiene in the cities, and that's why the cities were thriving so much and were so clean and healthy
so
for
cool.
the time. So this is an example of it. Maybe you guys recognize this place from something. It's been in a very famous show. Did you know that a lot of Game of Thrones scenes were shot here in Split and in Croatia? Here in this basement was shot the famous scene where Daenerys is talking to her dragons. So now we get into the city center where all the big monuments are and most of the remains. Look at this. This is Roman mosaic, completely preserved. It's very unique and it's now part of Croatian culture. This motif here, it is told that you can only appreciate their beauty if you see it from a distance. But they were also believed to bring luck, which might be why every grandma here in Croatia has a carpet that looks just like this.
That's funny. It is beautiful.
And it's so well preserved. Look at all these colors. So this you used to have on almost every floor of the buildings here in the forum.
It must take so much work to build this. It is so cool.
Yeah.
I still see like people are just walking on it.
Yeah,
It's like,
you just walk on it and most of it is original. That's amazing about this city.
I really like this. It's like for blind people. You can like they tell you which color the stones are.
And
by-
the material.
And the
you can feel
material.
it. You can feel the
Braille.
pattern.
That's really cool.
As I was telling you, the cement is really strong. So much so that you can have up to 10 floors on top of it. And even this huge 58-meter high tower. Look at it. It's amazing. So now we're moving on to the forum. But look at this. This is a private garden. Someone uses it to drink his morning coffee. Coffee is very important in Croatia. But imagine you have like the typical trees, the olive trees. Maybe you know that olive oil is a big specialty here. And fig trees. And these two trees are really good. They survive in difficult climate and in drought. So during times of war, you can eat figs and olives and you can survive. The whole city center is like an open air museum. Here for instance, you can see the remain of the foundations of some buildings. And look at this. You have different types of stones. You have red Roman bricks that you might recognize are typical of Roman architecture from the history tour in Torino that we did, for instance. And you also have medieval buildings with these different types of stones. And if you look around, you will also see buildings from modern times, all of this together in the same area. From this area, you can have a view over two of the main buildings of the city center. You have the High Bell Tower, and you have this octagonal building here. It's pretty important and there's a nice story behind it. So, when Democritus, the emperor, was getting old, he decided it was time to build a grave to be remembered properly by the people. So he started building this big octagonal building here, which became his mausoleum. But here's the plot twist. This did not stay just a mausoleum for so long. Democritus is known to be the last Roman emperor to not recognize Christianity, and therefore is responsible for the slaughter of Christians all around the Roman Empire. Few centuries later, refugees from around the empire come to Split and see this monument in his honor, and they did not want him to be remembered, because they knew he was responsible for the death of many fellow Christians. They started destroying everything around the city that was an homage to him. The statues, the monuments, but then they came to this and they thought, let's do something even better. Let's not destroy it, it looks nice. Let's turn it into a Christian church. And that's what they did. So here's the irony. Now, his mausoleum has become a church with this bell tower.
Now we're getting towards the forum, right?
Yes, a forum in a Roman city is like the city center. So that's where you will find all the monuments, the temples, and the place where the emperor is greeting people, which is where we are going now. So at the time you could go in and greet the emperor. And for this he wanted to look as good as possible, because he did think quite high of himself.
Emperors thought they were gods.
Yeah, they did. And so he wanted to appear like a god he believed he was. And for this you had to build a building that would make him look like a god or like an angel. And you have a special architecture for this. This building was designed especially to make the emperor look good. So on the roof you have a round cupola, which was covered with colorful mosaic. You have to imagine this. And the light shining through would illuminate the emperor with all the colorful lights, making him look like an angel. And then you have the spherical structure, which is built like this for acoustic properties, that would make his voice sound even deeper and more impressive. And because of this, it is still used today for its acoustic properties for traditional Croatian singing. Can you imagine? All this time built for the voice of the emperor back in Roman time, and now used for the same properties by contemporary Croatian singers. I think that's amazing. But there's another interesting fact about this place. As you may know, Croatia has been through a lot of wars during the 20th century, so it's only recent that it has become such a big tourist destination. And at the time, all these ruins, there was no tourists at all. And here it was used by some Croatian kids to play football with this as a goal, probably. So this is only recent that it's full of tourists like this, and actually that we can actually enjoy the Roman heritage of the city. Now there's even more here that we can see. Coming out of this place where the emperor used to greet people, you arrive straight into the forum. So that's the heart of the city, that's the city center. And here you have, well...
This is touristic as hell with the Roman soldiers.
Yeah, it's always full. But if you look around, it's like a living museum. It's amazing. Because, for instance, this Sphinx here, it was brought back from Egypt by the time of Democritus. And you might think, yeah, it's just a replica. No, it's the actual Sphinx, which is 3,000 years old. And it's just standing there. That's just amazing. Usually pieces like this are in glass boxes in museums, but here in Split it's different because for so long, as I said, tourism was not really a thing. So the heritage was just lying here and was part of the life of the city. Maybe someday it will be put in a museum, but for now it is just here hanging around with us, and it's so well preserved.
So cool.
So that was brought back by the emperor. And there's another Sphinx somewhere else in the city. So here is a central place. And what do you do on a central place? At least nowadays? Well, you can meet and drink coffee. And Croatian people have been drinking coffee for centuries. It's a big tradition, partly influenced by Austrian culture and by the Turkish coffee culture. And here you have a traditional coffee shop where you can enjoy a traditional Turkish coffee in the morning. Split is full of these little streets. It's a real maze. It's so beautiful. You can get lost in it very easily. And sometimes at the corner of a street you will come upon a beautiful historical building. And here's our next stop. Close to a forum, you always need a temple. Sometimes it's a temple dedicated to the patron gods of the city or to the emperor that founded it, like in Vienna, the temple of August and Livy. And here it's dedicated to the god of all gods, so Zeus in Greek, but now Jupiter in Roman. So here you have a temple of Jupiter. And now it is used as a Christian baptistry. In front of it, come have a look, we have another Egyptian statue. This one is missing a little detail, but it's also really well preserved. We don't know how this head disappeared. There are several stories around it. One of them is that the angry people who destroyed all the statue also just destroyed that head, or it's also during a wedding, a guy got drunk and shot a cannon straight in the head. We don't know what to believe and we don't really know. But it's still here today, and that's pretty amazing. Now we're walking around the temple. If you come around the corner here and you look up, you'll see that one side of the temple is inside a modern building. It's now a B&B that you can rent. That's very common around town. Until recently, tourism was not a big thing in Croatia, and most of the ancient buildings are privately owned or part of private properties, just like this one.
One cool fact about Croatia, or I don't know if it's cool, but it's very interesting.
It's unique.
It's unique. If your great-grandfather was born here in Split in the early 1900s and lived to be about 90 years old, he actually lived in 6 different countries without moving at all, because this region has been plagued by a lot of conflict. And so in the early 1900s it was the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and then later it was invaded by Nazi Germany, and then it was part of the fascist Italy, and became Yugoslavia again, and then now today is Croatia. So this is kind of interesting. They had 6 different citizenships without moving.
And now people want more stability. So of course, recently on a historical scale, it has become a Republic of Croatia. People are still getting used to this change, and even another change. This year, in 2023, they became part of the Eurozone. So it's another big change for people to adapt to. So can you imagine, this country has been never static, so much change for this last century, past 2 centuries. Well, the 20th century is the century where they had a lot of wars, and the 21st century, it is getting more stable, and people are getting used to these changes.
It's actually the most peaceful century this region has had.
Yeah,
Ever.
yeah. Finally, yeah. Here we come into the entrance gate of the city. You have the fortress wall and you have the gate. And it has 2 doors. Why? It's not uncommon for ancient gates to have several doors. Here it has a pretty strategic purpose. You had the first door, which was left open. So invaders, as I said earlier, it was a time where invasions were very common. So invaders would see an open door and they would think, okay, we can come in. So they would go in, and the second door would be closed. Before they could turn around, the guards up there would close the first door and they would be trapped in between the doors. And the guard could pour hot oil on the enemies.
That's a pretty smart feature.
Yeah, I think it's
Strategy.
Yeah. And here, as I was saying before, a lot of the historical buildings are privately owned, part of them at least. And here you have a B&B where you can sleep
Inside the gates?
Yeah, inside the gates. Yeah, you can rent it.
That's pretty cool.
So this was the main entrance to the palace. But outside there's also something interesting to look at. This big statue behind me is pretty important for Croatian culture and identity. It's a priest, and the first priest to ever preach in Croatian language. As you know, maybe you've heard about the German Reformation. At the time, preaching was only in Latin, because the church did not want the knowledge to be shared with the people. So when preachers started preaching and rebelling against this law in the local language, that became a big revolution. And this guy was the first one to dare doing it. And beyond its symbolic meaning for Croatian culture and history, it also has 2 interesting features: its fingers and its toes. The fingers are one of the most difficult parts to make in a statue. If you're not so confident in your skills, usually you will have the fingers hidden in the robe or something like this. But here, to show off his skill, the sculptor just made long, detailed fingers. And the toe is also important for a different reason. You know, around the world, there's a thing with people feeling like they have to stroke a part of a statue for good luck. For instance, in Verona, it's Julia's boobs, surprisingly. And here it's a guy, so he stroked the toe. And if you stroke the toe, you notice it has a different color because so many people are stroking it. Even right now as I'm speaking, they're queuing to stroke it. And if you stroke this toe and you make a wish, it will become true. But you don't have to, but you must not say the wish. Just stroke the toe, make a wish, and it might become true. So since a long time, people have been doing this. And now the toe is a completely different color.
Now I have good luck. Hopefully.
As you can see, most of the sites and the buildings in the city are marked by the presence of the Emperor Diocletian. But that's not it. As I was saying in the beginning, the city has also been under the influence of the Republic of Venice and the Austrian Empire. And you can also find some remains of this. Behind me, there is an example on the same plaza of Austrian architecture, right here.
Oh, the pink building, that's Austrian.
Yes, Austrian style. And some...
That's a bird. And that's Venice, right?
And that's a Venetian style building. As you might remember from our tour of Verona, this is typical for Venetian buildings. So on the same plaza you have 3 interesting things. Austrian architecture, Venetian architecture, and there's also a third thing that's pretty interesting.
This is more up my alley. That's the oldest coffee shop in the city.
The first coffee shop in the city.
Cavana Central Cafe or restaurant. We've been in there and tasted the coffee, and this is kind of if you remember our tour of our coffee visit to Vienna, the traditional coffee houses in Vienna. It's kind of the same thing for Croatian coffee culture. This is over 300 years old. It opened in 1750 something, I think. I don't remember exactly. But this is 100 times better than any coffee you find in a traditional Viennese coffee house.
We tried it and that was delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, well, it's not my preference, but it's actually really good.
It's interesting.
If you wanna see more of that, you can head over to the coffee channel.
Yeah, we had a chat with the owner and about Croatian coffee culture.
It was really cool.
Yeah, that was
really cool place. So, yeah, I guess that's more or less the city. We've seen most things here now.
The end of our tour.
Yeah. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something.
Yes.
It's always nice to have a history guide with me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed showing you around.
But I don't really know anything about like the story and the history and connecting the dots and everything like that. So it's really nice for you to sort of help me piece things together.
And it's interesting to travel through Europe and see the connection between the cities and all these big empires that had such a big influence in the region. As I said, we talked about the Venetian Republic, we talked about the Roman Empire in like a few different countries now, and we can make these connections. Actually, an interesting fact that I wanted to mention, some of the stones that you will see in Venice have been taken from Split, because at some point, when Split belonged to the Venetian Republic, well, Venice was lacking stones and they wanted to build more, so they took some stones from the Forum in Split and they used them to build more in Venice. So if you go to Venice, there will be stones from Split.
That's interesting.
So that's the most fascinating thing when you travel and visit different cities that used to belong to the same big empires or influential republics. Then you can see this connection, even though these places are quite far away. So that's pretty cool.
Roman Empire was huge.
Yes.
Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, click subscribe and ring the bell if you want to see where we end up next. Now, we're going on a little bit of a motorcycle camping tour for a couple of days, 1 or 2 days.
Around the region, yeah.
Around this region. We don't really know exactly where we go, but any direction here is beautiful, so I'm sure it's going to be interesting. And now finally you have some motorcycle gear as well,
yes.
So
and
it's going to be
camping gear.
And camping gear.
Hope it won't rain, and that's perfect.
Yeah, according to the forecast, it's going to rain for 3 days from tomorrow. So let's hope that's wrong.
Every time we go camping, it rains.
Yeah.
Just like this.
So I guess we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.
Peace.
As you remember, I told